Welcome back to another furniture redesign. I'm going to be taking this vintage Hutch top and going to be completely redesigning it. I am going to paint the entire outside. I will be painting the inside too. There are some areas that show some wear and tear, but nothing too bad. It's all very structurally sound. I do still have the backer board pieces, they just fell off in transportation. I do also have to replace the top. It just has a thin piece of plywood on the top, but multiple holes have been drilled through by previous owners. I'm just going to replace the plywood on the top so that it's a nice clean surface for the paint. Every project, I start off by thoroughly looking over the piece, regardless of what type of piece it is, and I will disassemble what needs to be disassembled. For example, this glass in this Hutch, I want to avoid getting any paint on it. It needs to be cleaned, so I'm going to take it off and put it in a safe spot while I'm refinishing the rest of it. Now that I have that delicate glass removed, I'm gonna go ahead and take the doors off. As I do anytime I remove a hinge, I will always write on a piece of masking tape and stick on what orientation and what side each hinge went on. So this is the right door, top hinge. A lot of times with these vintage pieces, the hinges like to go back in their original spot. You're just gonna run into less issues with doors closing properly without having any sort of rubbing or just having a misaligned fit. I'm also going to remove the magnetic latches that hold the doors in place. I just find it's a much cleaner outcome if you don't paint over all of this stuff. It just is a cleaner finish in the end. I actually don't mind these original drop pulls. I suspect that they're brass. They will clean up really nicely and they've got some nice weight to them. So I think I will keep these and reinstall them once they've been cleaned up and once my new finish has been sprayed on. I'm now going to pry up all these little staples to remove this top so that I can measure and cut a new top and replace it. They really used a lot of staples on this one. They did not want it going anywhere. Now that everything's off, I can go in with a TSP substitute cleaner and spray everything down really, really thoroughly. And I'm going to take a clean microfiber cloth in a bucket of warm water and wipe everything back. I'm going to wipe it back with clean water one additional time too, just to make sure that I've gotten all the soapy residue off so that it does not affect the adhesion of my paint and primer. Now that that top piece is removed, I can measure and cut from my scrap plywood the width and length of a board that I need. So this one, I'm gonna say 11.5 by 59 and an 1/8. There are a couple small chips in the finish, so I'm going to use this body filler. It's a two-part system. Similar to Bondo, creates a nice, strong, durable layer over little minor chips and stuff. Take a little bit of part A. Work in small batches. The stuff dries really, really quick. So if you need to do it a couple different mixes, that's perfectly fine. And mix it on something that you plan on throwing away after. It can be difficult to get off surfaces. Mix it up until it's a uniform color, but I do this pretty quickly because it will start drying as soon as those two colors come together. While I'm waiting for the rest of the Bondo to cure up, I have a 180 grit sandpaper on my sander. I'm gonna go around the rest of the body of the Hutch and give everything a really light sand. I'm not trying to remove the finish, I'm just trying to roughen it up just a little bit to give it a little bit of tooth for the primer and paint to have something to grip onto. This also will help to smooth out any very minor scratches or dents that might be in there. Sometimes you can buff them out without having to fill them. So this will give me a chance to go over the piece one more time and assess if there's any more areas of filler that I need to fill. Now that all the Bondo has been smoothed out and the entire piece has been scuff sanded, I'm going to go back over everything with a damp microfiber cloth that is clean in order to pick up any of that fine dust so that it does not get in the finish of my paint and primer. Today I'm going to prime with this Zinsser Bin Shellac primer. It's a great multi-purpose primer. It has wonderful adhesion properties as well as stain blocking, and it dries really quickly. It's really sandable if you need to sand out any lint or dust that might have landed in the finish in between priming and painting. It's a really great primer. It is a little difficult to clean up. It does either require denatured alcohol or ammonia and water. However, once you get that specific cleaning ratio down, it comes out pretty well. This is my go-to primer. I really like it. It's a little bit pricier than some of the other water-based options, but I find you really can't beat it. I do opt to spray this primer. However, it does roll really nicely. Just keep in mind, if you do roll it on, use a roller that you plan on throwing away afterwards, as again, the cleanup can be a little messy, a little stinky, but if spraying isn't an option, it rolls really beautifully, and it also does come in a spray can form. That just gets expensive because a spray can does not hold nearly as much product, and they're pricey as it is. I've ordered in the print that's going to go in the back of the Hutch on the backer board. And now that it's come in, I've mixed up some custom colors to compare to the different hues of the blues and greens in this print. And I think really truly any of these would work, but I am leaning towards probably this one. Golden Groves by Benjamin Moore and Regent Green, also by Benjamin Moore. If I mix a 1-to-1 ratio of both of those together, I get that really pretty blue-green, medium toned shade, and I think it will look really, really nice on this Hutch. Taking a high grit sandpaper, this is 220, I just have it over a foam abrasive. I'm going to very, very lightly just sand over all of the surfaces that I primed. This will just ensure that I have a nice smooth surface for the next layer of paint that's gonna go on. I'm gonna start by spraying the two doors. I have them laid out on some 2x4s with masking tape over the top just to help protect the paint when I do go to flip them over. I find that it's easier to start spraying the backside, so I will spray 2 coats on the backside, letting them dry in between, and then let that dry thoroughly, flip it over and spray the front side. That way, if something does happen, say your paint wasn't fully cured on the backside, that's the side that needs to be touched up and not the front, which is much more visible when just viewing a piece. Whereas the backside, I still want to have a really nice finish, but if I need to touch up, it is less noticeable. I have pre-cut all of my panels of paper that are gonna go on the back of this backer board. I think I'm actually going to start the first backer board upside down just so that I can get a nice clean edge line and make sure everything is covered that needs to be covered. A few hours have gone by and the first coat is completely dry. So I'm going to take that same 220 grit sandpaper and I'm going to very lightly hand sand every area that I painted just to make sure it's nice and smooth. And then I'll go ahead and spray on my second coat. The Hutch originally had 2 long glass shelves and both of them were damaged pretty badly. They both had cracks on the corners and they would have been pretty expensive to replace with 2 new fresh pieces of glass. So I am going to go ahead and replace those 2 shelves with a 3/4 inch piece of plywood each. I had the store rip each board down to 11 inches wide and I did cut it to the appropriate width. And now I am going to iron on some edge banding on the edges of both of these shelves so that you don't see the plywood edge. It looks like a finished piece of board. And then once I'm done with that, I can go ahead and stain them to match the new set of legs that I will build for this cabinet. Now that the edge banding has had some time to dry and cure, I can go ahead and trim off the excess using one of these trimmers. I find that they're a lot easier to use when cutting edge band. You can use just a straight up razor blade and just go really carefully and gently, but I do find that these faster, they're quicker, and they leave just a little bit of a cleaner surface left behind. I'm gonna start building and cutting the lumber for the base of this cabinet. I'm gonna be using 1.5 by 1.5 inch square boards for the actual legs. I'm gonna do about 6 3/4. I have enough for 4 legs at 6 3/4 of this material. So I'm gonna make 4 legs at that measurement. And then I will measure the base of the cabinet and cut the base stringers that are going to span around the bottom and attach the legs together. And those are what I'm gonna use to affix this new base to the actual cabinet itself. The total cabinet length is 59 3/4. I want this base to sit in just slightly on either side, so I'm gonna subtract 1 inch from that, so 58 3/4. And then we have our 2.5 inch legs that we have to account for. So I'm gonna subtract an additional 3 inches from that. So I'm gonna cut 2 boards at 55 3/4, and that will account for the front and the back, and then I will cut the sides at the appropriate width after that. I'm now going to use my Kreg pocket hole jig, and I'm going to drill some pocket holes on 2 pocket holes on each edge of all 4 boards, as well as several along the top to attach these legs and base to the actual cabinet itself. So when I'm all said and done, I'll probably have about 6 holes per board, maybe more for the longer boards. Now that I have all the holes drilled on my base and I have the edge banding on the shelves, I'm gonna give everything a really good sand with 220 grit sandpaper, just all edges, all sides, in order to prepare it for stain. Now that I have everything all sanded down nice and smooth, I can go ahead and start assembling the legs. I am going to use just a little scrap piece of board to lift the base of the legs away from the actual legs itself. I like it to have a little bit of extra dimension. It's completely optional. You wouldn't have to do that if you wanted to recreate legs similar to this. I have this set in clamps, and I'm going to screw in both sides. I was debating going back and forth on whether I was going to stain these wood pieces a medium to dark brown color or do like a light paint wash. And I think I am going to do the paint wash. Just what with the colors that are in the print on the backer board and the paint color, I think it'll be a nice pretty contrast. Using a water-based top coat, I'm going to seal over all of the areas that I did the paint wash to on the 2 wooden shelves plus the base. This will ensure lots of durability as well as wipeability so that people can wipe off the shelves if they get dusty or need to clean them, as well as the legs. It's the next day and my shelves are all dry. All the top coat has cured, and now I can put them in place. I did make them fit snug just because for transport and everything, it's nice that when they don't move around a whole lot. Now that I have the backer board back on, that really helps to sturdy things up and keep the cabinet nice and square. I'm going to go ahead, flip it on its back very carefully, and install the base and the legs. I'm going to use clamps to help me hold this in place just while I get the first couple of screws driven in. I find it easier to clean the glass before reinstalling it. You can always wipe up any fingerprints. It's difficult to clean the inside of the stationary pieces while they're in place. So I'm going to give them a quick clean before putting them in. Those two original brass drop pulls, I boiled for 20 minutes in 50% water, 50% vinegar in my designated hardware pot. Don't use your kitchen pot, that would be gross. It does get pretty nasty after a while. But once that was boiled, now they're cooled down, I'm gonna use some Barkeeper's Friend and some fine steel wool. And I'm going to just polish these up really, really well. Because they are brass, they're really gonna come back to life, and it's not going to take much. Once these have been fully polished and they are dry, I am going to use a lacquer, a spray lacquer, and I'm going to reseal them, because if you do not seal them, this brass will tarnish really, really quickly and end up looking exactly like they looked right before I boiled them and cleaned them. And that's it. It's all complete. I always love doing hutches. They're one of my favorite pieces to refinish. They're a lot of work between taking them apart, taking the glass out, cleaning everything, making sure the doors align properly. But you can have so much creative freedom with them between the paint, the paper. I absolutely love this one. Let me know what you guys think. Like and comment down below. Thanks.